We're back, I'm very pleased to say, joined by Burak Bekdil, a man who I have come to admire greatly for both his insights into what is happening inside and in the neighboring states of his native Turkey, and his courage, really, in discussing them in, among other places, his column in Hürriyet Daily, an Ankara-based Turkish newspaper. He has also been writing for the U.S. weekly Defense News since 1997. You can also find his writings periodically at the Gatestone Institute, a marvelous organization. He previously served as the Ankara bureau chief for Dow Jones Newswire, and he's always a welcome guest here at Secure Freedom Radio. Thank you so much, Burak. Good to talk with you.
Thank you.
I'm interested in your take on this new opening, it seems, that has arisen in recent days as a result of the Turks not only making use of airstrikes against targets in Syria, putatively associated with the Islamic State, but also opening up at last Incirlik Air Base, where U.S. forces have been stationed, enabling them to attack such targets there and perhaps in Iraq as well. What is behind this sudden turnabout on the part of President Erdogan and his government?
Well, it was clearly a miscalculation on the part of the Islamic State. Here's how it reached the point where we observe it now. Turkey was a very fragile cohabitation with the Islamic State over the past year or so, based on a mutual understanding of certain Turkish tolerance to IS activity in Turkey in return for a natural shield that would protect Turkey against any potential IS attack. But then the miscalculation enters the picture on July the 20th when an IS suicide bomber killed 32 mostly pro-Kurdish Turks and Kurds in a small Turkish town bordering Syria. So IS thought that Turkey would perceive this as an attack against the PKK, the Kurdish militants, and not against itself. This bombing the next day led to uncontrolled firing between Turkish troops and IS militants inside Syria, which resulted in the killing of one Turkish non-commissioned officer, which was the first Turkish direct combat contact with IS. And there, Turkey had to change its policy and shift towards the Allied line, which naturally paved the way for the Turkish decision to allow the U.S. military to launch airstrikes from the Incirlik Air Base.
Burak Bekdil is our guest. He is today a columnist for the Hürriyet Daily News in Turkey and also for Defense News here in the United States. And Burak, you were talking about an uneasy relationship between the Erdogan government in Turkey and the Islamic State. Would it not be more accurate to say that Turkey has had a kind of modus vivendi with the jihadists of the Islamic State over several years now, enabling them to bring foreign fighters through Turkey, to have refuge in Turkish areas, and again, preventing attacks upon them from Incirlik? I understand that game may have changed dramatically once the Islamic State started attacking Turkish targets, but is that not an accurate way to understand what led up to this event?
Basically, it was this bombing that I mentioned that broke down this modus vivendi that you just mentioned. These people, the Islamic State people, are distant and violent ideological next of kin for Erdogan and his allies in Turkey. But there's also a huge difference between this ideological kinship, that the Turkish government is in no way engaging in violent or terrorist attacks against any target. But this doesn't mean that Turkey has not facilitated the IS's activities and operations inside Syria and Iraq over the past year or so.
And they have a common enemy, of course, in Bashar al-Assad.
They have two common enemies, not just one: the Kurds and the Syrian regime.
And the Islamic State has been tearing up the Kurds pretty badly for most of this period. But what does the role of the Turkish military at the moment portend in terms of both the Turkish indigenous Kurdish population and that across the border in Syria, and perhaps Iraq for that matter, as you see it?
Basically, the military's line, the generals used to have the ultimate say in things like those in the past, but no more these days. I mean, we have a totally different picture. The military's main concern now is to be extra careful in not taking an illegitimate step, both in terms of Turkish law and international law. So they're basically waiting for orders from the government, trying to put down everything in full into the paper and get their orders and get things done. But everything has to be legal, legitimate.
And from the Erdogan civilian government, not at their own initiative.
Yeah, the generals feared to be blamed in the past for anything that may go wrong beyond the border.
Particularly, I imagine, with respect to the Kurds. Our guest is Burak Bekdil from the Gatestone Institute as well as Hurriyet Daily in Turkey. And Burak, a question that I think has probably bemused many of us is, what's going on with respect to a government in Turkey? Besides the Erdogan presidency, which is supposed to be, as I understand it, more or less a figurehead role, there were recent elections. They did not go well for the AKP, the party of Erdogan. Where do things stand there at the moment, and how do the developments that you've just described with respect to the Kurds possibly bear on the future course of the government in Turkey?
Well, there are unconfirmed reports that the president, Erdogan, may be calculating that a re-election in his own wording, I mean an early election this autumn, could work well for him, his AK Party government, because, as you know, on June 7th, the AK Party failed to win enough seats in parliament and lost its parliamentary majority for the first time in 13 years. So what Erdogan might be calculating is that in case of a re-election this autumn, this party, AK Party, may this time win enough votes to at least form a government itself without a coalition partner. But I doubt if this will in fact happen, because in the first place we don't have a credible polling or any credible research suggesting that AK Party's votes may be on the rise. That's one thing. And secondly, if we link the situation to the new waves of terror and violence in Turkey, I see that more and more Kurdish votes will flee AK Party and go to the pro-Kurdish HDP party. And more nationalist Turkish votes will flee AK Party, this time going to the rival coalition Nationalist Party.
But this is really the question I wanted to get at, because I understand that there is a profound rift between the nationalists on the one hand and the Kurdish party activists and voters. Can a coalition be forged, especially in this kind of environment, between them, or do you think that they can be sort of divided and conquered by Erdogan, even if he doesn't poll that well, in his own right?
Theoretically, yes, a coalition alliance can be formed between AK Party and the main opposition Social Democrats, but that's only in theory, unless Erdogan does something to disrupt the whole plan.
Burak, unfortunately, we are hard out of time. I hope you will come back to us again soon for a further drill down on both the developments that we've discussed here today and others that we just couldn't get to. But thank you for the great work you do at Hurriyet Daily, Defense News, and again at the Gatestone Institute, and for joining us from time to time. We'll look forward to doing it again very soon. Michael Cutler joins us next. We'll talk about immigration in the United States and who's coming and what does it mean straight ahead.